I'm Sarah, a 34-year-old high school teacher with a knack for seeing the best in people, a trait that often defines my relationships, but sometimes complicates them too. It was a warm Saturday in June, perfect for a family BBQ in the spacious backyard of our suburban home. My husband, Mike, was focused on grilling, his usual ceremonial precision turning the process into an art form. The air was thick with the smell of barbecue and freshly cut grass, yet beneath the surface there was tension. "Sarah, you should really try talking to Laura more," Mike had suggested earlier while prepping the ribs. "She feels like you don't like her." I glanced over at Laura, animatedly chatting by the garden. "I'll make an effort," I agreed. "Sometimes I think she just misreads what I say." As the afternoon wore on, I found myself cautiously engaging Laura in conversation about work and hobbies. She had recently started a new job and was both eager to share and visibly stressed. "It's just so hard," she confessed, nursing her drink. "Everyone expects me to fail." I tried to offer comfort. "Everyone feels out of place at first. I remember when I started teaching, it felt like I was on trial every day. But you grow into it. Not everyone's going to be your cheerleader, and that's okay." My words, meant to reassure, seemed to land wrong. Laura's face stiffened. "So you think I'm not capable?" "No, that's not what I meant," I rushed to clarify. "I'm just saying it's normal to feel." But she had already turned away, walking over to her husband Derek, who was flipping burgers nearby. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing as he caught the gist of her recounting. The rest of the afternoon passed with a strange silence between them. As dusk settled and the guests trickled away, I decided to clear the air. I approached Derek, who now stood alone by the porch. "Derek, I think there's been a misunderstanding with Laura." "I didn't mean—" "Save it, Sarah," he interrupted, his tone sharp. "You always act so superior, so judgmental. Laura doesn't need your kind of support." His words stung because they couldn't have been further from the truth. "Derek, I genuinely—" "You genuinely what?" "Look down on us." His voice was rising and he stepped closer, his presence suddenly intimidating. "You disrespected my wife at my brother's house." Before I could respond, he shoved me hard. The world tilted as I stumbled backward, the wooden steps jarring against my spine as I hit the ground, pain shooting through me as I landed on the cold concrete. The murmur of concerned voices blurred around me as Mike rushed over, his face a mix of disbelief and worry. After the incident, an uncomfortable silence hung over our home. Mike helped me inside, gently applying an ice pack to my bruised elbow. His expression was clouded with concern, and something else I couldn't quite place. "Sarah, he didn't mean it," Mike started, his voice low. "It just got out of hand. Derek's under a lot of stress." I pulled away slightly, the ice cold against my skin. Mikey pushed me down the stairs. "That's not just getting out of hand. What if I had broken something?" I know it's bad, but he's my brother. He's apologized, hasn't he? Can't we just consider that maybe he didn't mean for it to go that far?" His words hung between us, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down. "An apology doesn't change what happened," I said firmly, "and it doesn't make it okay." Over the next few days, as my bruises turned from deep purple to a sickly yellow, I began documenting everything. Not just my injuries, but every strained interaction with Derek and Laura that I had brushed aside. I revisited old conversations, texts, and emails, piecing together a pattern of behavior I had long excused. One afternoon, over coffee, I cautiously brought up the topic with Jenna, my cousin who had always been more like a sister. "Jenna, have you ever felt uncomfortable around Derek?" She paused, her cup halfway to her lips. "I thought it was just me," she admitted. "Last Christmas, he made a comment about my job search, like I wasn't cut out for real work." He laughed it off, but it stung. Encouraged by Jenna's honesty, I reached out to others. Mike's aunt and uncle, who had distanced themselves from family gatherings, old family friends. The stories poured in, some hesitant, others angry, but all relieved to be heard. Piece by piece, I wove together a tapestry of intimidation and casual cruelty, hidden behind Derek's charm and easy apologies. Armed with these testimonies, I began a discreet file, documenting everything, not just for my peace of mind, but more than a defense, it was a record of truth. Each conversation, each shared experience from others strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about a fall down the steps. It was about standing up to a bully who had hidden in plain sight, shielded by the family's reluctance to acknowledge who he really was. One late night, as I organized the evidence, papers, digital recordings, and screenshots, Mike found me at the dining table. His eyes were clouded with concern. "What are you doing, Sarah?" he asked, the worry lines around his eyes deepening. "Building my case," I replied, my voice steady. "Because next time, and with Derek, there's always a next time, I'll be ready to show everyone exactly who he is." The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Organize a family gathering under the pretense of reconciliation, but with the real goal of exposing Derek for the aggressor he was. I needed this not just for my own vindication, but for everyone who had silently suffered. The date was carefully chosen, a weekend when everyone was available, no excuses for missing. Invitations went out, and I made sure to speak to each person personally, ensuring their attendance. "It's time to clear the air," I'd say, a half-truth that weighed heavily on my conscience. As the gathering approached, I reviewed my collection of evidence: texts, emails, recorded testimonies, a litany of aggression hidden behind closed doors. Mike watched with furrowed brows, but he said little. His silence felt like a storm brewing just over the horizon. The day arrived, deceptively calm. The house buzzed with guests, their greetings and small talk layered over the tension simmering underneath. Derek and Laura were the last to arrive. Derek's smile strained, unaware of what was about to unfold. Once everyone was settled with refreshments in hand, I stood up, tapping my glass lightly. The room hushed, all eyes on me. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," I began, my voice steady. "I know things have been difficult lately, and it's important we address the elephant in the room." Derek's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Laura's hand tightened around his, her knuckles white. "I've always believed in transparency and honesty within a family," I continued. "Recently, I was hurt, not just physically, but emotionally, by someone I trusted." My gaze locked with Derek's, challenging him to look away. He didn't. "What happened to Sarah was unfortunate," Derek interjected, standing to take control. "But it was an accident, and I've apologized. We're family. We should be moving past this." There were murmurs in the room, a mix of agreement and uncertainty. This was the moment of truth. "It was no accident, Derek," I countered, pulling out a folder. "And it wasn't the first time." I turned to the projector behind me, clicking through the emails, texts, and recordings I had collected. Aggressive messages, dismissive apologies, voices from those he had bullied or hurt over the years. One after another, the evidence piled up. The room grew eerily quiet as the voices from the recordings played on. Each testimony, each piece of evidence painted a picture of a man far removed from the charming brother-in-law he pretended to be. As the weight of the evidence mounted, so did the discomfort in the room. Family members glanced at Derek, then quickly looked away, unable to meet his gaze. His usual defenses faltered, slow and ineffectual. "This isn't what it looks like," Derek stammered, his confidence crumbling like a punctured balloon. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said softly, the room heavy with the weight of truth. Abuse hidden behind apologies and dismissals could no longer be ignored. The fallout was immediate. Conversations broke out across the room, not whispered, but open, raw dialogues about experiences and grievances long buried. Derek, once the life of every family gathering, found himself isolated, the social fabric he'd carefully woven unraveling around him. As people began to leave, some cast sympathetic glances my way, while others avoided Derek entirely. By the end of the evening, it was clear the family dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Derek's carefully built image was nothing more than a house of cards blown away in the wind. When the last guest left and the door clicked shut, Mike put his arm around me. His earlier reservations had melted away in the face of the undeniable truth. "I didn't realize how bad it was. I'm sorry." "It's not just about us," I replied, leaning into his embrace. "It's about setting things right. No one should feel unsafe in their own family." In the quiet that followed, I felt a sense of closure, a battle fought and won, not just for myself. Derek's downfall wasn't something to celebrate, but a necessary step toward healing a fractured family. In the weeks following that pivotal family meeting, the repercussions of his actions began to surface. While I chose not to press legal charges for the incident at the BBQ, others who had endured his bullying and aggression were less forgiving. Complaints were filed, and several family members and former colleagues who had shared their stories with me took their grievances to formal platforms. The collective weight of their actions began to tip the scales toward accountability. Derek's career, once buoyed by his charismatic, if sometimes overbearing, personality, started to suffer. Word of his behavior seeped into his professional circles, affecting his consultancy business. Clients withdrew, not wanting to be associated with someone embroiled in public accusations of misconduct. Socially, invitations dwindled, and whispers at gatherings could no longer drown out the truth of his actions. As for me, the aftermath brought an unexpected sense of uplift. Support from family and friends, once hesitant to confront Derek, now flowed freely. Jenna and others thanked me for taking a stand, for giving them a voice when theirs had been silenced for so long. Mike, too, stood by my side, his earlier conflicted loyalties now resolved by the undeniable evidence. Our relationship, tested by the strains of confronting his brother, emerged stronger, fortified by honesty and mutual respect. Empowered by the collective support, my sense of self-worth and confidence soared. No longer did I question my instincts about Derek or wonder if I'd been too harsh. Taking action had brought a clarity that was liberating. With Derek and Laura, boundaries were firmly established. They remained part of the family as they had to be, but our interactions were cordial and distant. Mike and I agreed that while forgiveness was possible, forgetting was not. Our priority now was the safety and well-being of our family. Our home became a sanctuary again, no longer a battleground of hidden resentments or veiled threats. The peace that settled wasn't just the absence of conflict, but the presence of a newfound respect among all who entered. Mike and I found joy in the simple moments, quiet evenings together, the warmth of a supportive community, and the silent acknowledgement of our shared strength. Reflecting on this journey from betrayal to empowerment, the lesson became clear. Standing up for oneself and for others isn't just about confronting conflict, it's about fostering healing. Derek's future was now his to mend or further damage, but our path was clear, full of hope and promise. As we closed this chapter of our lives, I looked forward to a future where integrity and courage would define our family's legacy. And for anyone listening, remember, it's not just about weathering the storm, but learning to dance in the rain. Hi, I'm Sylvia. Looking back at my early years, I remember a childhood filled with love and laughter, thanks to my amazing parents. We weren't wealthy, and we didn't live in a fancy neighborhood, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. My sister Rachel and I were inseparable, always getting into mischief together. Our parents just laughed it off, saying kids needed to explore the world around them. But everything changed when I was 8. One rainy night, my parents were driving home from work when a truck skated on the slick road and crashed into their car. They died instantly. At first, Rachel and I didn't understand why they never came home that night. It was our Aunt Melissa who broke the news to us. I remember her exact words. "Your parents had a terrible accident, Burles. They're gone." In the days that followed, Melissa made a decision that would change everything. She took in Rachel, saying she could only handle one child. Rachel was quiet, the kind of kid who could sit in a corner and read for hours. Me, I was too much like my parents, vibrant and always on the go. Melissa said I was too much for her to handle. "I'm sorry, Sylvia, but you'll have to go somewhere else, somewhere more suited to energetic kids," she told me, barely hiding her disapproval. I couldn't understand. Weren't we both her nieces? Why was I the one left out? I was sent to an orphanage, a place that still haunts me with its antiseptic smell and cold, unfeeling walls. I felt abandoned, like a throwaway child, unwanted even by my own family. But fate had other plans. The Smiths, friends of my parents, heard about what had happened and came for me like angels in disguise. They didn't see the troublesome child. They saw a girl who had just lost everything. "Why wouldn't we want you, Sylvia?" Mrs. Smith said gently as they signed the adoption papers. "You're going to be our daughter now, and we're going to make sure you have everything you need." Moving to a new city with the Smiths felt like stepping into a different world. They loved me as their own, never once making me feel like an outsider. They supported me through school, cheered me on at soccer games, and were there for every high and low. As I adjusted to my new life, I couldn't help but wonder about Rachel. How was she doing? Was Melissa kind to her? Did she miss me like I missed her? Life moved on, and I grew up in a home filled with love and acceptance, slowly healing from the wounds of my past. That's how my journey began, in a loving home that chose me when my own family turned me away. Hey Sylvia, you're awfully quiet today. What's on your mind? Mrs. Smith asked, looking concerned as she handed me a cup of coffee across the breakfast table. It's nothing really, I said, my voice trailing off. I had found a box of old letters in the attic, letters that weren't meant for me but had told me so much. Sylvia, whatever it is, you can tell us. We're here for you, Mr. Smith chimed in, his expression soft and inviting. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to share. I found letters from Aunt Melissa to my parents. I began, my voice trembling. She talked about taking in Rachel, but not me. She said I was too much like my parents, too wild to fit into her perfect family. The room went silent. Mrs. Smith reached over, squeezing my hand. Oh, Sylvia, that must have been so hard to read, she said softly. It was, I admitted, but it explains a lot. Why she never came to see me, not even once. I guess I just wasn't the right fit. Sylvia, remember, we chose you because you fit perfectly with us, not because you needed to fit into some mold, Mr. Smith said firmly. I nodded, feeling the weight of years of confusion starting to lift. I know, and I'm grateful every day, but it still hurts, to be rejected because of who I am. We understand, sweetheart, but remember, you're not that little girl anymore. You're a strong young woman who has overcome so much, Mrs. Smith said, smiling warmly. Encouraged, I continued, You're right, and I'm going to use this. I'm going to write my thesis on family dynamics and acceptance. Maybe I can help others understand and deal with similar situations. That sounds like a wonderful idea. We're so proud of you, Mr. Smith said, his voice filled with pride. The rest of my college years flew by as I immersed myself in studies and part-time work, fueled by a desire to prove that being too much could actually mean having a lot to offer. My thesis on family acceptance was well received, opening doors to graduate studies and a promising career in social work. Each success felt like a silent nod to Melissa, showing that her rejection didn't define me but propelled me forward. My relationship with my adoptive parents grew stronger, and I found solace in knowing I was loved unconditionally. As my career took off, I often reflected on those difficult revelations and used them to drive my passion for helping others. Each family I helped reconcile felt like healing a little part of myself that had been broken. Through it all, I kept moving forward, determined to live a life full of love and acceptance, proving that sometimes being too much is just enough. One crisp afternoon, as I was settling into my office, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello, Sylvia speaking. This is Nurse Thompson from Greenwood Care Facility. I'm calling about your aunt, Melissa. She's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and her condition has deteriorated. Hearing Melissa's name after so long jolted me. I'm sorry to hear that, but there must be some mistake. Melissa and I haven't been in contact for years. I understand, Sylvia, but before her memory faded, she insisted we reach out to you if things worsened. Her family, they haven't visited in months. I paused, the weight of her words sinking in. I see. What exactly are you asking of me? Just a visit, perhaps. It might comfort her, even in her current state. I mulled it over, feeling an old wound reopen. Later at home, I turned to Jared, my fiancé. We sat on our porch, watching the sunset. Melissa's in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. They want me to visit her, I explained, unsure of my feelings. Sylvia, you don't owe her anything. Remember, she made her choices, Jared said, his voice steady. I know, but it's complicated. Part of me feels like I should do something. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Just think about what's best for you. The next day, I sought advice from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Sylvia, it's okay to protect yourself, Mrs. Smith said gently. You have your own life and your own family now. Melissa made her bed, Mr. Smith added. It's not your responsibility to fix it. Their words resonated with me, but I still needed more clarity. I decided to call Rachel, hoping to understand her absence from Melissa's life. Sylvia, I stayed away on purpose, Rachel confessed. Living with her, even as a favored child, was suffocating. When I left, I decided it was for good. Did you know about her condition? I asked. I did, but I chose peace, Sylvia. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my sanity. Rachel's admission hit me hard. We had both found our escape, our way to breathe away from Melissa's controlling shadow. After reflecting on my conversations, I made my decision. I called Nurse Thompson back. I've given it a lot of thought, Nurse Thompson, I said, my voice steady. I'm sorry, but I can't visit Melissa. It's a part of my past that I can't revisit. Please understand. I do, Sylvia. Thank you for considering it. We'll respect your decision. Hanging up, a mix of relief and sadness washed over me. Jared wrapped me in his arms, his support unwavering. You made the right choice for you, Sylvia, he assured me. Leaning into his embrace, I felt the strength of his support. Choosing to move forward on my own terms was perhaps the hardest, yet most freeing, decision I had made. Sitting across from Rachel at the cozy little cafe we'd chosen for our meeting, I felt a swirl of emotions, nerves, anticipation, hope. It had been years since we'd sat down together, just the two of us. Sisters trying to bridge the gap that time and circumstances had stretched wide. As we sipped our coffee, Rachel was the first to break the silence. I've missed this, Sylvia. I've missed you. I've missed you too, I replied, the familiar pain of our separation easing a bit with her words. I'm sorry we let so much time pass. We were both dealing with a lot, but I'm glad we're here now, she said, her smile tentative but genuine. The conversation shifted toward our aunt, and I hesitated before speaking. I heard about Melissa's condition. It must have been tough to hear after all these years. Rachel's expression clouded. Yeah, it brought up a lot of old feelings. But I realized that staying away was necessary for my own healing. She wanted to shape me into something I wasn't, and when I couldn't fit into that mold, it hurt a lot. I nodded, understanding her more than ever. She did the same to me, in a different way. Rejected me because I was too much like mom and dad, too energetic, too lively. It's ironic, Rachel mused. She pushed us away trying to mold us, and now she's the one left alone. Yeah, and I've decided not to visit her, I said softly. It's hard, but it's what I need to do to protect my peace. I hope that's okay. Rachel reached across the table, squeezing my hand. It's more than okay, Sylvia. I support your decision. We both need to do what's best for us, not just what's expected. Our conversation drifted through memories of our childhood, the good and the bad, as we pieced together a clearer picture of our shared past. It was therapeutic, talking openly about the hurt and healing, about the life Melissa tried to dictate and the lives we reclaimed for ourselves. We have each other, Sylvia, Rachel said as we prepared to leave. That's what matters. Let's not let anyone come between us again. I smiled, feeling a profound sense of relief and reconnection. Agreed. It's us against the world, right? Right, Rachel echoed with a laugh. As we hugged goodbye, I felt lighter than I had in years, fortified by the renewed bond with my sister. Driving home, I reflected on our journey, the pain inflicted by Melissa, our paths of personal growth, and our decision to maintain our distance from her. It wasn't about holding grudges. It was about choosing our well-being and focusing on a future that belonged to us, not dictated by the shadows of the past. That night, as I shared everything with Jared, his steadfast support and understanding underscored the incredible strength I'd gained, not just from my chosen family, but also from reconnecting with Rachel. Together, we were moving forward, healing from our scars, and building lives filled with love and purpose. The morning Melissa passed away, there was a chill in the air, not from the weather, but from the finality of the news. Rachel called me early, her voice steady yet tinged with a whisper of old grief. It's over, Sylvia. Melissa is gone. As I processed her words, a tangle of relief and sorrow twisted inside me. Are you okay? I asked, knowing the complexity of her emotions. I think so. It's strange, isn't it? To feel relief that it's finally over, Rachel replied. It is, but it's also okay. We've been carrying this burden for too long, I said, feeling the truth of my words deeply. We decided to attend the funeral together, not for Melissa, but for ourselves, to put to rest the last remnants of our painful past. Standing by her grave, the small gathering was stark, a testament to the solitary life she had led in her final years. There were no eulogies filled with warmth, only the cold recitation of her life and passing. As the pastor concluded his prayers, Rachel squeezed my hand, a silent pact between us. We were there to say goodbye, not just to Melissa, but to the shadow she had cast over our lives. Walking away from the cemetery, I felt a chapter closing, one that had lingered open far too long. In the weeks that followed, life moved swiftly toward a much happier occasion, my wedding. As I stood in the bridal suite preparing to walk down the aisle, I was surrounded by laughter and the bustling energy of my bridesmaids. Rachel was there, radiant and supportive. No longer just my sister, but my best friend. "You look beautiful, Sylvia," she whispered, adjusting the veil on my hair. "Thanks to you. I couldn't have gotten here without your support," I replied, our eyes meeting in the mirror, a shared history reflecting back at us. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of and more. Jared stood at the altar, his eyes brimming with emotion as I walked toward him. The church was filled with our friends and family, every face a reminder of the love and support that had guided me here. As Jared and I exchanged our vows, promising to build a future together based on love and mutual respect, I felt the weight of the past truly lift. We were moving forward, but we were doing so on our terms, our lives defined not by the shadows of what had been, but by the light of what could be. The reception was a blur of music, dancing, and laughter. Mr. and Mrs. Smith danced every dance, their faces alight with joy. Rachel gave a toast that brought everyone to tears, not just for its words of love, but for the journey it recounted, one of healing and rediscovery. As the night drew to a close, Jared and I stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The stars were out, a tapestry of light against the dark sky. "We did it," I said, my head resting against his shoulder. "We did," he agreed, kissing the top of my head. "Here's to new beginnings, to love, and to a future we create together." As we stood there, the night whispered around us, promising years of happiness to come, built on the foundation of choices made with courage and the strength to let go of the past. The air was no longer heavy with loss but light with the promise of the life we were ready to live. Now that our story has reached its conclusion, I have a question for you all. Sylvia and Rachel made the choice to attend Melissa's funeral not out of obligation but to seek closure on their own terms. Do you think attending the funeral of someone who hurt you was necessary for healing, or is it better to find peace from a distance? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.